Greetings and welcome to the Worship Design Studio. I'm Dr. Marcia McFee. Last night we recorded our first webinar that's a little introduction to the Worship Design Studio. So take a look at this to find out a little bit more about what's inside the studio. And if you're a member, it'll just help you learn to navigate it a little bit better. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy. If you'd like to become a member, be sure to go to worshipdesignstudio.com and we'll help you out with that. Thanks. Bye. We're now recording, and so glad that everybody's on for this webinar. We're up here in the main menu at the Worship Design Studio Home. WDS Home gets you to this spot in the Worship Design Studio. Every time you click on that, it brings you back to this what we call the resource library. Design app is, we're going to do that in the second half of this webinar, but when you click on that, it takes you into where you are working on your series. So in this account that I have, there are 2 series that I'm currently working on. So whenever you click Design app, that takes you to your specific work. Worship series is where you go to see all of my series templates, to see if there's one that you would really like to do for the coming season. There's 30 right now, 33 of these. Which represents 4 years of my series for every season, plus now into the 5th year. And we'll talk more about this later when we get into talking about the Design app. But that's where that is, and you can quickly go there in the upper main menu. Profile is where you click to go and edit your user profile, if your address changes, that kind of thing. You can change your password here, and this is going to be an important place for your members of your team. Because those of you who are admin folks are going to add your folks in your church onto the team. You're going to give them a password to get in the first time, and then they can come here and change it to whatever they want. And that's easily done right here in user settings. And then resubscribe is a link to resubscribe or to subscribe when you're needing to up your subscription. Member Manager, this is a really important one. This is, you can see the members of the team are all listed here. This is where you're going to add a member. So here you go, I clicked on Add Member, and if I'm the admin person of the account for the church, this is where I'm going to add another member. So let's just add Jordan to this. I don't have to put in addresses, only the things that are highlighted. I'm going to put Jordan's and church name. We'll put Worship Design Studio for Jordan. And then I'm going to give him just a temporary password, WDS password, let's say. And then I add member. And it's going to automatically send him an email to that email address and let him know that he's been signed up, gives him the sign-in information and his password so that all the members of your team can go in and then be part of your account. And this is going to be important because we're going to interactively work on series together. So you want everybody in the church account. Okay, so member list, that just shows you all your members. You see Jordan was just added down here. And then you can email members from here as well. You could email everybody by checking all and then writing an email to the whole team, or you can just email a few people or one person. But you can email right from here, and it's going to email them at their email addresses. Now, series assignments is where we can assign different team members to different series. So Leslie, let's say, she is assigned only to We Are Family. So she's not assigned to the other one that we're working on, because I might have some people who are on one series team and not on another series. I may have some core people who are on every series and they work on it all the time. So that gives you the ability to do that. But you don't add them to the series here. You're going to add them in the Design app, and I'll show you that when we get to that later. But I just wanted to show you this, and this is all inside the Member Manager link in the main menu. So that's Member Manager. Search Resources is the next one in the main menu. And this is where you can, let's say you're getting ready for Lent and you want to see everything that's in the resource library that has to do with Lent. And so what it's going to do is it's going to it's going to pull up all the ones that specifically have to do with Lent. Let's go back to search resources again. All of these list of words are just suggestions. You can't actually click on those. That's why it says keyword suggestions. Actually type the words in the box above. So if you're just looking, we just want to search around and you want some ideas, then every keyword that I put in just automatically goes here, just so it gives you some ideas. All right, and now of course log out, I'm not going to hit that one. Now what's this little light bulb right here? That is something called favorites. And right now I only have a couple of favorites here. Actually did two of the same thing, so just know that if you do two of the same thing, it will show up. But when we get to the resource library, you'll see that every article, every resource has a little light bulb next to it. And if you click on that, it's going to put it in your favorites box. And that's what will come up here. So every time you click this, things that you want to go back to or remind yourself about, they will be in your favorites. And you can just click on that. Let's go back there. You can click on this and unfavorite it if you don't want it to be in your list anymore. All right. So we've gone through the whole main menu. Awesome. Let's go back to WDS Home. Okay, let's look at some questions before we go back. Does the email app use our own emailer or does it live in your system? You know what? It's going to send you, I understand, it's going to send you a copy, I believe is how we have it set up. It's going to CC you to your email so that you can see that it was sent to the person that you sent it to, because it is living, it's living in our system, but it's sending out to your emails. Hope that answers that, and I hope I'm not lying. So here we are back in the Worship Design Studio. I want to show you a little bit about these ritual arts corners. There's 5 ritual arts in the Worship Design Studio: music arts, dramatic arts, media arts, visual arts, and verbal arts. Again, you can click on these little buttons in the actual 360, or you can come down here, and they're all living down here as well as static buttons, so you could get to them there. Let's look at visual arts as an example. So I'm going to click on the visual arts button, and that takes me to a library page where I have all kinds of resources about the visual arts. There's different kinds of resources, so I want to take you through those. One of the kinds of resources is a foundational article. Every corner, every art form has a foundational article, and I wrote these articles as a way of saying, here are some of the main ideas that I think that visual artists should be thinking about as part of the team, as part of what their job is, what the things that they can contribute to the team. This is a great place to send folks who are working on visuals. So let's say you add someone to the team who's never worked on a worship team before, but they have some visual arts skills, or they love to decorate their homes. Those are great people to have on your visual arts teams. And you can send them here. It's sort of, the idea is it's a self-guided curriculum and training tool for your team, so that you're not having to do, if you're the pastor or the lead, the worship chair, you're not having to do all of the education. You can get some curriculum right here. So here we are, and what happened when I clicked on it is that a flip book opened. And I want to introduce you to the flip book technology, because all of the articles, podcasts, everything is in the flip book technology. I really like it because it lets you be interactive with it. So let's take a look. It opens up. There's always a different background picture that has to do with the article itself. You can flip pages by clicking on this arrow over here. Yes, you can print out the foundational flip books, yes, and I'm going to show you where to print those. So you can go backwards and forwards in the pages, and when you do it on your computer and you have the sound on, you'll see that it has a little page turning noise. It's kind of cute. So you can do it that way, or you can actually pull it like an actual page if you really like that aesthetic. It's kind of fun. I tend to use these arrows. You can also use the arrows down here to turn a page. Just so you know, the 4 arrows, pretty standard, but if you're not familiar with it, the bigger arrows are just 1 page at a time. If you click on the furthest one, let's say on the left, it's going to take you back to the beginning or back to the very end. All right, so that's what those arrows are. And that's how you flip pages, which is kind of fun. So other things about a flip book is that inside them, if you see a little gray circle like this, it usually means that I've put a little secret note in there of some kind. So click on it. And so I've actually put this note in there. This is my own personal note. We should do this for Lent. So that refers to our menu over here on the left side. You see this menu right here? There's a ton of things you can do from over here. The first one says share. Okay. So on the left side, there is a menu of options. Let's go back. Jordan was saying he couldn't see this. So let me just circle it. Do you see that left menu? When I click on share, I could share this via email with somebody on the team. I could share Facebook, Twitter, Google+. We love for you to do that. Just know that only members will be able to open a flipbook that's behind, let's say, we call it the wall, the membership wall. So the link to it will be there, but if somebody's not a member and they click on that link, it's going to open up the Worship Design Studio, but it's going to ask them to subscribe because these are members' materials. We have some materials that folks can see on the outside, but just so you know that. You can download it. When I click on that, you can download a Windows version, a Mac version, and it will be an actual flipbook on your computer. Or you can just download the PDF version of the material itself. And that's, you could click on that and print from the PDF. You could copy and paste from the PDF, and that's how you want to copy and paste. So if there's something that you want to just excerpt for, say, a newsletter, that's the way you would do it. Download the PDF, and then you can do whatever you want to with the document. Now here's the print button, so you can print that right to the computer. It won't print all of this around the edges, it'll just print that document. The search button, you can search a word. Let me just put in visual, that should pop up. And it searches the document. You see there's 23 matches for the word visual. And it will, you just click on it and it takes you right to that page where that's found. Settings, this is, you can customize your settings about zooming and that kind of thing. I didn't show you the zoom. If you just click on a page, it will zoom up closer so that you can read it easier. If you're on a tablet, an iPad, a laptop that's not big enough for you to see just like in this form. Help is a great place to go where it just pops up and reminds you about corners and what hotspots are and how to zoom. And then full screen, if you click on that, of course, it's going to blow it up a little bit bigger to go to your whole screen. And that may be the best way to read it I'm on a laptop. So that makes it big enough for me to read in without having to zoom in. You press escape to get out of that. Now, the last one has a whole bunch of stuff. The top is a bookmark, so you can bookmark a page. You can write a note like I did, and it puts a little secret note in there. So when you go back to this, you can read your own notes. When you send it to somebody, I have to try this. I'm not real sure if the notes get sent or not when you share it with somebody else. So don't hold me on that, but if you try it, just let me know. Thumbnails, if I click on thumbnails, it's just going to show me a thumbnail version of the whole booklet. You can kind of get an overview and see how many pages there. And then finally exit down there. So that's really the flipbook technology. It's kind of cool. I decided to use this because of the features of making your own notes, bookmarking it, sending it. It makes it a little more interactive. Also, I'm able to put links in there for you in these articles. So let's see if this one has a link. Yeah, here's a link. So I'm talking about this company, theworkofthepeople.com, which I think does really good work on media visuals. And so right in the document, you can click on that link and it'll take you right to their website. That's another reason why I decided to use these flipbooks. So that's a foundational article. Let me quickly go back to our visual arts resource page and show you some of the other kinds of resources that we have here. So we did foundational articles. The next thing is interviews. Let's take a look. I did an interview with, I do interviews with a lot of guest artists. So let's look at this one, Interview Creativity and Advent. This was with Alexandra Childs, who is a wonderful visual artist. And in fact, she was the one who helped stage the Worship Design Studio. So in any interview pieces, I'm going to have a picture, and this is the button that you click to actually get to the interview. It's going to open up another page with an audio podcast on it.
The Worship Design Studio with Dr. Marcia McFee. Interview with Alexandra Childs.
And it will open up the podcast right there. And then again, discussion questions after you've listened to the podcast, the interview. Again, just discussion questions to get you jump-started. Okay, articles. I try to regularly put lots of articles, and of course, here's the fun about this format is that I just get to write things and post them. It's just an ongoing way of teaching. So you're going to see things in here that have been here for a while after you've been in the Worship Design Studio, but you'll always see new things. And I try to let you know when I've posted new things so that you can, it's going to take you a while to get through the ones that I already have there, but I will always let you know when there's something new. Let's look at the article, Sensory Rich Worship. Here it is, right here. Articles are always brief. I believe that the most useful resources are short, brief, maybe a little bit longer than a blog, but brief things that you all can read together or read separately and then have discussions about. So, for instance, Sensory Rich Worship, it's a short one. It has 3 main points and then 3 discussion questions. So these are great. That's why I call this a curriculum and a virtual coach, because these are things that you can use to enhance your conversations with your worship team. Okay, articles, interviews, foundational articles, finally more resources. Let's look at this one, Jan Richardson. So more resources basically are resources that are out there in the world that I recommend, that I think you should know about that would enhance your library. Jan Richardson is this wonderful artist, but also poet, writer. Many of you know her work, and she's one of our guest experts in the Worship Design Studio. So I want you to know about her resources. So more resources is always a resource that I'm pointing you towards, and I put enough information in here for you to make a decision about whether these are some things, her books are some things that you would like to add to your library. So I make it my job to sort of search the internet for you. I know there's a ton of free stuff out there, and that's great. But I know that your time is limited. And so one of the things that I believe is my job is to keep my eye out for great resources, because I am scouring things all the time. So let me do some of that work for you, and we'll always post things in the Worship Design Studio that I think you should check out because they're really good. Okay, so that is an example of what's in every corner. So that was just visual arts, but music arts, verbal arts, media arts, dramatic arts, all of those have their own resources, their own foundational articles. I want to recommend that not just the people who are working in those different areas read the foundational articles, but I want you to invite your whole team to read other things. So musicians reading about visual arts. It helps the team to know a little bit more about each other's tasks. And I think it makes a better team. So you could virtually do your own curriculum and say, let's all read the music foundational article this month and talk about it when we get together, or email about it, or Facebook about it, or whatever. And then the next month do the verbal arts kind of thing. So just a suggestion. Okay, let me talk to you about Marcia's desk. Let me spin around here. And you could, like I said, you could either click on me, or just kind of to the side of me on this, or you can click on, this is the icon, static icon for Marcia's desk. I'm going to click on the purple one up here just for giggles. I'm virtually there all the time, looking out that beautiful window. So in Marcia's desk, there are two different regions. The top one I call spotlight items, and basically these are going to be always the newest things that I've posted. They are also the timely things. So Epiphany, we just started Epiphany, what I call Epiphany Plus, and so I have those here. I'm going to be adding tomorrow. I'm going to be adding all of the Lent things here. So whenever you come to the Worship Design Studio, you might want to make Marcia's desk your first stop. And that gives you all of the timely or new items. You can also find all of the guides here. So the Get Started Leader Guide, the Get Started Team Member Guide, which I recommend you have people read when they become a team member, developing the team, design process, all of those are also there. In the second region are all video clips of me teaching. They're all from 3 to 5 minutes long. They're on different topics. Again, it's short bites that will help you jumpstart some discussions about different things. And there's a lot of them because in the last 20 years I've gotten around. So just little 3 to 5 minute clips. It's the way that I can be, you can have a virtual workshop with me whenever you need it on any topic. And again, these are in the form of flip books, and within that flip book is you'll click on a hotspot and it will take you actually to a YouTube page to watch the video. And then there's discussion questions, much like all of the other articles. So I won't take the time to go into those. All right, well, that's Marcia's desk. We are moving right along, which I'm glad that we're doing. And I want us next to go down here to the seasons and series. I'm going to spin around here so you can see where that is in the actual space. I put up I created these easels. I am a very visual creator. Collaging is something I do a lot when I'm designing a series, collecting images and things. So I did that very same thing here. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Woohoo, hello. And you can see that I created these easels, and actually I do have these in my office here on the wall. But Advent, Christmas, Epiphany Plus, Lent, Holy Week, Easter season, Ordinary Time, summer and fall, and about creating worship series. That's what this whole section is about. Now here is you can see the easels in the static button down here. And I'm going to click on that, and it's going to take me into the page where I can get to all of those seasons. So we have Advent, Christmas, buttons down here at the bottom, Epiphany Plus, Lent, Holy Week, Easter, Pentecost, Ordinary Time Summer, Ordinary Time Fall, and then about creating worship series. Let's look at Lent. Since Lent is coming up, why don't we use Lent as an example of the resources here? So I'm going to click on that. And for the, Worship Design Studio is not brand new this year. It is in this format, but I did a very DIY version, do-it-yourself version on iWeb for the last 4 years. And what I did is I recorded podcast interviews with guest experts. So always on the interview, I had myself, a preacher, a nationally known preacher, a nationally known visual artist, and a nationally known music director on the call. And we would brainstorm about the season coming up. So in this case, we brainstormed about Lent for lectionary year C. Now on the brainstorm, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was all about the lectionary. We brainstormed lectionary ideas, but also non-lectionary ideas. And so these are in the Worship Design Studio now. And since we're in year C, that's the one I've opened up. And again, flip books. You see this beautiful, I just have to take a moment and notice the beautiful picture in the background. This is actually a picture of a photo of an installation by my friend Ted Liddon-Hatton. Let me just flip the book the other way so you can kind of see the other side. Ted he's a pastor and a visual artist, and he does what he calls ephemeral art, or visual homiletics, meaning that he creates it and then it's just there for a time and then he destroys it, because he uses things like rocks and sand. And this, my friends, is a butterfly made out of myrrh. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Just extraordinary. And seeds. Amazing work. So at any rate, he's a guest expert in the Worship Design Studio, and you'll see more resources in here from him. Okay, so I'm going to open up the flip book, and what you see here right away is the link to the podcast itself. Again, you'll click on that, and it will open another page where it will load the podcast. And the podcast
The Worship Design
has, you'll see pictures with it as well, just a few pictures where it's sort of, I'm talking and I'm introducing my guests, so you can see the guests who are on there, Carla and Dan, and I think this was Taylor. And then we do a brainstorming exercise. So there is a little bit of visual there, but it's mostly audio. But that's where you'll listen to the podcast, but you could also just read the transcript of the podcast, which is here in this document as well. We'll get to that. Let me show you on the way what else is there. I always have these questions to consider as you listen. Mainly you're going to come here when you're trying to discern what are we going to do thematically for Lent. In other words, what is the spiritual journey we're going to be on for this season of Lent? And these materials, I hope, will pique your interest, jumpstart you, give you inspiration about what the journey is for your congregation for this year. So we have some historical points of interest that I just do a page of it. I just do bullet points. I could do a whole lecture on the history of Lent, but I don't think your worship team wants a whole lecture. Maybe they do, but this just gives them an idea. I also do some of the theological aspects to consider, seasonal aspects. So it just, again, bullet points to get you steeped in all the different possibilities. Is Lent this year going to be mainly about what we let go of, or is it going to be about preparation for a deepened spiritual journey? I mean, the possibilities are endless. And thank God, because Lent comes around every year, right? So some theological aspects. Then we have, I always put symbols and symbolic actions that are traditional for the season. And then there's an at-a-glance look at the possible series that come up in our brainstorming in the podcast. So you can see at a glance, these are some of the things, some of the titles that came up as possibilities. So for instance, let's do a little search here. Let's say you look at this and you go, oh, U-turn and other signs, rules for the road. That sounds really good. That sounds like something that could work for our community. So let's do a little search over here on the left-hand side, as we did before. And let me just put in U-turn, and it's going to pop up. Now I see I'm on page 8, so I know so page 17 is where this starts. So it goes right in the transcript to the place where we start to talk about this idea of U-turn and other signs. So you see how this flip book can help you sort of get to some of the main things that you want to look at. All right, so transcript of the podcast happens. But before that, let me go back and show you that in each one of these, what I do is I study the lectionary. So if you are going to use the lectionary, I'm not a purist. I believe that there are great times to use the lectionary and that you don't have to use it all the time. That's just my opinion. And I think a lot of people do that. But if you are using the lectionary, I do a little study of that lectionary, and I offer you what I see popping up in that in terms of directions, spiritual journeys, thematic possibilities. So in the Hebrew lections, I'm seeing the idea of offering or new beginnings and change. And then I just put the scriptures that have to do with those in that way. So there's a lot of ways to brainstorm around the lectionary. This is just the way that I do it. It's not a substitute for exegesis, but it sure is helpful, I think, to get you jump-started on, okay, what's going on in the lectionary? And there's tons of great lectionary resources out there. So again, not trying to be all, do all, compete with everybody, just it's my way of helping you see what's there at a glance. So that's every season, every lectionary year, there is a flip book just like this for that, with an audio podcast, the transcript, historical, theological, lectionary themes, and hopefully that will just be a great place for you to get started on thinking about what you're going to do for the season. let me show you this last button about creating worship series. This is the place where you can also find all of the guides. I showed you in Marcia's desk, in the spotlight items, I have all the guides, but this is really the holding place for all the guides. Friends, this is all the best practices that I have collected in my 20 years of working with worship teams. What works, what doesn't work, it's one way to follow, to tweak, to adapt to your own context. But it does give you a place to start with that. So, for instance, you can have new team members or your team members read the Get Started Team Member Guide. Developing the team. If you don't have a worship team, you're going, yeah, right, Marcia, it's just me, myself, and I right now. About developing a worship team here, developing the design process. If you need a little more structure around how you're going to do it, that will give you some step-by-step. This guide about the liturgical year just takes a few of the pages out of what I just showed you of all the liturgical year and just does an at-a-glance flip book that, let's say you have, a lot of our churches are filled with people who are, came out of very liturgical traditions and some that came out of not very liturgical traditions. And I use that word in terms of following the liturgical year. And so this is a great place to get the whole team on board together about what is the liturgical year. You may have somebody who just joined your church that has no idea what Lent is or no idea what it means to go through the cycles of the liturgical year. That would be a great guide for those folks to look at. The Visionary Planning Retreat. I really believe that it's a great idea to 2 times a year, pastors, go and have a retreat on your own and prepare themes. And so this is my step-by-step guide to doing that. Read that before you go on a retreat, and it gives you tips for that. Brainstorming parties. What to do when you get your team together and start to brainstorm around a theme. The work of the series team. So all the guides, tips for the Q to Q rehearsal. If you don't know what that is, read the guide. It's from my theater background. It really helps with flow. I'm known as the flow queen to some people, and this is how I do it. I do Q to Q rehearsals. All right. Okay, well listen, I'm going to go on because I want to keep this to our hour. I'm going to go on into the design app and we'll take a look at that. So back to WDS Home, and your design app link is right there in the main menu. And when you click on that, it brings you to the page where your series that you are working on reside. When you first open your account to the Worship Design Studio, you're not going to have anything here until you start to create series. So here we are. Let's look first at these little icons over here. The Facebook link, and Grace, the answer to that, because I just saw it, the whole, you become a subscriber, and everything I'm showing you is only for subscribers. So there are some things that I post in my blog. I have a blog that's free. The Facebook pages where I post various ideas and things. I have a Pinterest page. Those are all free. But everything I'm showing you here is what you get when you subscribe to the Worship Design Studio. And you have access to all parts of everything. It's not parsed out. Everything you see here is part of what you get as a subscriber. So let's look here. Facebook page. When you click on that, that goes directly to our support page. And if you have a question, a problem, you can't figure something out, this is where you would come and you would write right here in the status your question, and that notifies our fabulous tech people to answer your question. So that is sort of our help center. We're using Facebook in that way. The book right here with the question mark on it, that is the Design App Manual. And again, it's a flip book, but let me tell you what, it has a lot of pages, and every page, one page for every part of the process. So really, most of your questions should be answered there. I recommend that you just peruse it even before you start using the design app, but that's always there for you. And then the little feet are always a step-by-step video. When you click on that on any page, it's going to bring up a video that I have made that tells you about this page. Okay, let's go over here to the left side menu. This is where you're going to be creating series. You can start from scratch, completely from scratch. So for instance, David, you're doing the 24 hours that changed the world. That's not one of my templates, so you would be starting from scratch and creating one of these little icons, and we're going to do that in just a moment. So that would be create a new series. Or you can create a series from one of my templates, which we briefly saw before, and I'm going to go back in there in just a moment. Or you can, the archive series button, let me just show you what that is really quickly. When I click on that, that's actually how you get rid of icons that are right there. You can see that I created one actually as a test for what I'm about to do earlier. And so I had 3 in there, and I wanted to hide that one. And so I just clicked on it to put it to archive series. This is our version of delete, because we don't ever want you to delete by mistake, so we don't actually ever delete anything you do. We just allow you to hide it. So if you wanted to go back and click on it, if I just clicked on this, it would move it back into the active series. So that's what archive series is. Let's go to the create series from template. So like I said before, these are 4+ years of templates of series that I have done over the last 4.5 years. And you can use those as a template, but you can adapt them and you can tweak them any way that you want to. So they're just a starting point for you. Like I said, they're all listed when you first go in there. They have the icon, they have a little description. So like this is the Lent series that I'm working on right now for 2013. It is lectionary based. So it just has a little description, and then it has some more ways to see more about that series. Let's take a look at that. Let's look at the inspiration page. I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So the first step in the process in the design app is to create this inspiration page. There's 3 different templates. You can use 3, 4, or 5 pictures. But basically what this is, I imagined if I wanted to let the congregation know about what we're working on for an upcoming season and sort of whet their appetite, maybe even give them an insert to hand to somebody and say, this is the series coming up in Lent. We'd love for you to come. You can use this in many, many different ways. But it always has the title of the series. It has the main scripture or the theme scripture, some pictures about the series. So this is all about pilgrimage and roads, and it's actually based on a movie here with Martin Sheen. So I have Martin Sheen here. And then it has what I call a synopsis, just a very brief 2 or 3 sentence synopsis about the main direction of the season. So that's an inspiration page. So you can just click on that to see what that is for any one of these series. You can also click on worship, is what I call the frame synopses, and frames are just all the individual services. So this is a PDF of my descriptions of every one of the services in the series. So I have a scripture, a main scripture that I'm going to use, and then I have a 2 to 3 sentence synopsis of each one of the Sundays or weeks. I mean, you may not all worship on Sunday, but that gives you an even more in-depth view of so you can decide whether you want to use that or not. And then you can also click on brainstorms. Let's look at the one this is the Passionate Jesus was the one I did for Epiphany. And I have a little more brainstorms in that, so I'm going to show that to you. That opens the brainstorm page, which I'm going to show you here in a moment. And these are all resources for the series that I have put together for you. So there's always one that's called Resource Ideas for the Series, and that is a PDF, and this is, there's a lot of ideas in this one, so it might take a moment to load up. But they're ideas, verbal, visual, multimedia, ideas, music ideas for every Sunday. Now here's the thing, I don't believe one size fits all. So I am not giving you full-blown liturgies. Like, these are not bulletins all ready for you to do. I think you have to adapt these series to your order of worship, but I want to be sure that I give you enough resources to really get you going on this series. All right, I don't want you to feel like you're starting from scratch. So that's what I do, and you can see there's a lot of ideas, dramatic arts ideas, media arts ideas, music ideas. You're probably getting dizzy here as I'm scrolling. But that's what I give you for each one of these templates. And then I'll also put things in, like I did an interview with Carla Kincannon, one of our visual arts guest experts, about this very series. And so I have that interview there. It was about a 15-minute interview. I have an interview with Peter Wallace on this one because this is based on a book by Peter Wallace. And so I have a short interview with him. I have song ideas, and so you can see kind of what that is. So that helps you decide if you want to use one of these templates. Now, let's say you're just looking for Lent, and you don't want to look at all 33. So click on Lent, the box for Lent, and then click on Filter. That will bring up the 6 that I have for Lent, specifically for Lent. But here's the thing. There's a lot of series in here that could be used for Lent that weren't specifically designed for Lent. So you could click on the Anytime series, which I believe are ones that are adaptable to different times of the year, and filter that. And you can look at 23 of the series I think could be adapted in different ways. When you decide that you want to use one of these, then you would click on Use Template. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Use Template here. What it does is it automatically opens up the Edit Series page. You can edit my synopsis. You can change it to whatever description you want. You can choose a different start date. I have 2013 in here, but let's say you're going to use this next year. You're going to do the way next year, and so you would need to change that date to the start date of Lent next year. You might want a different theme scripture for the whole series, so you could change that. Now, you can also add a new service type. We're not going to get deep into the nitty-gritty of all of the design app features. We'll have some other webinars that are less intro and more nitty-gritty tech. But suffice it to say, if you have an 8:30 service and a 10 o'clock service, you might want to have different series descriptions for each one if they're vastly different styles. So you can add a different service type, and you can add weeks or subtract weeks to my series, and you do all of this here in the Edit Series. But here's the cool thing. When you click on Brainstorming, my stuff is there, right? And then you're just going to add to it. And when you add to it, your team is going to start brainstorming ideas. You can put in a name, great video, sorry, I'm misspelling, for week 2. It's media arts. Check out this video for possible use in week 2. I could choose a file. I could, for a video, I would probably be putting a web link because it might be a YouTube video. It might be, I'm not sure, it might be a link to a Vimeo or whatever you say that. I don't even know how to say that. And then you would add the idea, and it becomes yet another brainstorm. And anybody on your team that is assigned to this series can open that up, and if I had actually put a web link, it would be right there and be able to go to it. So for example, you can put images. This one has an image attached to it. So you can upload various attachments in PDF form or JPEG form or Word form, and your whole team has access to that, to these brainstorms. You can also comment on each other's. So here's a web link, so you could open that up, and I could comment, very cool, I think we should use this, okay, whatever. So you can comment to each other, and it says who did that comment and when. So this is where it gets really interactive, friends. Again, we're not going to have time in this one to go through all of the details of the design app, but you can see that it's an interactive resource where your team can work together on bringing ideas together, finding resources, and then finally assigning tasks in the task manager, putting your scripts together, your worship guides, all that kind of thing. I did tell you that I would show you where you assign members. So let me click on Assign Members. When I create my, my series and put it on my desktop there, it's going to automatically add everybody who is a core member. Core members are those who are your main worship. You might be your music director, pastor, etc. They're going to be on every series automatically. But like I said, you might have some other people on the team, like these folks, that you want to be working on this series. And so I would pick one and I would add them. I'm not going to do that because these people don't know I'm using they're on a different series, and it would automatically send them an email to tell them that they're on this series, and they would be confused. So I'm not going to do that right now, but just know that that's what would happen with your team, is that automatically they would know that they're on this series, and it would give them a link to come right here where they would see the series they're assigned to, and they could go into it. Do you notice this? Let me go back. Do you notice this? I think this is one of the coolest things about this app, and that is when I go into that, the picture that I chose for that series becomes my backdrop. I think that's way cool. But anyway, so they would come here and they could immediately begin brainstorming and gathering resources and helping you, David, with that question, what vision? Well, that's what we had time to get done in our webinar last night. One thing we didn't get to, and that was creating what I call an inspiration page. So I'm going to do that right now and add this to this recording of this webinar so that you can see that piece and before we close out. So here we are where we left off in the brainstorming area. Let's go back to the Design app and let me show you how you might create your own new series from scratch. One of the things that I love about the Design app is that it helps you imagine and literally steep in the imagery for the season. So let's start with create a new series, clicking on that. And the series title, I think titles are really important. They give us a taste right away about what the series will be. I'm going to use Wade in the Water, which is, of course, a reference to a spiritual, but also a reference to the waters, perhaps of our baptism, all kinds of waters. So that's what our series is going to be about here. Season title, I'm going to put Lent, series length, 6 weeks, and the series start date in February 17th, 2013. That's going to tell the program where to start the dating of the different weeks. Number of service types. You may have one service each week, or 2, or even 3. So we're going to say 1 in this case, and click Next. Now, I'm going to give it a title, the service type. So if I clicked 2 on how many services per week, I would have had 2 spaces to put, say, traditional and contemporary, or whatever you call it. Service type, let's just call this spirited traditional, why don't we? Okay. Now, series details. I like to put together a series synopsis. It's a 2 to 3 sentence description of what the series is going to be, the main message. Gives people a little taste of what's coming, and it helps visitors, if they come in the middle of a series, to know, what is the essence of the message of the spiritual journey that we're on. So let me just put this in here. Okay, so I've typed it in. What I typed was Lent, developed as a time of preparation for baptism in the first centuries of the church. This Lent, we will wade in the water, focusing on what we'd like to have washed clean from our lives, affirm what is refreshing in our lives, and search for that which can quench our thirst. Come wade in the waters of God's love with us this season. So I gave you a little sense of what it's about, a little tidbit about, historical tidbit about Lent, and the invitation to come and be on a spiritual journey together. Now you'll see that the program invites you to keep it to a particular number of characters, and that's just a discipline that I have about staying succinct in a synopsis, so that gives a little taste, but it doesn't go on for too long. So there we have the series synopsis. Now, series scripture fragment. I always like to have just a little fragment of a scripture that may be the main scripture for the season. For this one, I'm going to use God's message to Jesus at his baptism. You are my beloved. I'm just picking that one. I might choose another water scripture, by water in the Spirit, something. But anyway, that gives you a place to put a main scripture. Okay, how many services per week? It may feel like you already answered this, you did, but it's just the program needs to know that one more time for a different purpose for structuring everything that's coming up. Standalone services, maybe, for instance, like in our series of Lent, I'm going to have an Ash Wednesday service at the beginning. So that may be something that I want to stand alone apart from the synopsis of the main series itself. So I'm going to put 1 for that standalone service, and it's going to create a separate little place for me to design Ash Wednesday all by itself. All right, choose canvas style. We're making this inspiration page, so you can choose 3 pictures to put in. You could choose 4 pictures, this layout, or you could choose 5 pictures, this layout. I'm going to just choose canvas 1. It's going to give me a larger image, and that's what I call the anchor image. So whatever you choose as your first image, that's going to be the anchor image, and you're going to find out that it shows up as your wallpaper, as your backdrop on your screen anytime you're working in that series. So I'm going to choose canvas 1. I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask me to upload the pictures that I want on my inspiration page. So here we are. And you can upload photos from your computer. So I'm going to click Choose File. It's going to bring up my computer resources here. I've already chosen 3 pictures, so here's my first one. I'm going to choose that. And you see there's a box for image source. This is so we can keep track of photo credits. These are by my friend David Valera. And so I'm going to put his name there. If you get one, let's say a Creative Commons license, royalty-free photo from the internet, you would want to put where on the internet, the URL there in the image source, so that we can remember where that is and give credit to the photographer. If we use this page in a public forum in any way, we can have that in our worship guide, or in our newsletter, whatever. But we want to be sure that we are really good about copyright issues. Okay, so I'm going to choose 2 more. Here's another one I'm going to choose. Again, it's David Valera's. And number 3, I'm using 3 of his. This is a really great way to use photographers in your church. You can get around all copyright issues if you actually have a photography group who are taking pictures for you, which is a wonderful way to get people involved on the worship team that might not normally be on the worship team. And they can begin to build a library for you. All right, I'm going to hit upload the images, and depending on the size of your images, it takes more or less time to upload those. So as that's uploading, just want to remind you that what I just said about photography, you can go into the resource library in the Worship Design Studio under Media and also under Visuals. And one of our guest experts, Valerie Eisenhower, has written an article about getting people involved in photography. There we go. Okay, so you see how automatically the first image that I chose became my anchor image, and now it's my background for working in this series. I just love that. Because it really literally steeps us in this. We are wading in the water every time we come and work on this series. All right, you're going to get this message when it uploads. Congratulations, you've created a new series. Now you can either go to frames and fill in information for each week, or you can start brainstorming on the general theme. So before we leave this page, let me just show you, if I click on that actual little thumbnail of the PDF, it will open the PDF in its larger form. And this is where you could print right off of your computer and use that as a bulletin insert. Use that as a poster. You could blow that up and use it as a poster. You can use it in many different ways. The way that I most commonly use it is simply as a guide for the worship team as they begin to collect images, ideas, songs, visual images, photos for the season. It gives them a little taste of what you're thinking of as the visionary. So here we go. And you see it's put my title, it's put my scripture, and it's put my synopsis here, along with the beautiful pictures right there. So you can also, if you If you make this and you go, oh, I don't really like that image, I want to change that, you can also do that by clicking on Edit Inspiration Images, and it takes you right back to where you can upload some more images and change those. So the next part of the process, and we're not going to go into great detail because I just wanted to get you through making this inspiration page, but the next part of the process, as I read here, you can either go to frames. Now, frames in the Worship Design Studio are literally like a gallery, or like the frames of a film, one Sunday to the next. So that's the word I used for weekly services, or your services, rather than saying Sundays, because not everybody worships on Sundays. But if you click on the word frames, it's going to take you to this, and you're going to put in titles, your titles for every week. And if I had more than one kind of service, it would have spirited, traditional, contemporary, etc. But you see here, I can choose spirited, traditional, or standalone. So I would probably do, in this case, I would probably enter in my Ash Wednesday one here, and the standalone, and then start with Lent 1 here. So, all right, we're not going to do all of that. But the next thing you would do then with your team is have a brainstorming session. Now, I like to do a live brainstorming session for a series. So maybe 8 weeks before the series starts, get your team together, have a party. Again, there's a guide in the resource library about what to do at your party, lots of different brainstorming exercises. But then once you've done that, or even without that, your team can come here, click on brainstorming, and start to add their ideas. So they would click on new brainstorm idea. Of course, Wade in the Water is probably our theme song for this series. Music arts is the type. Let's use this as a thread to start the service every week. All right. And then I might even upload a file if I had the music to that. I could put that there, or I could find an example of Wade in the Water, say on YouTube, that I think is particularly good, and I might put that web link there so that the whole team could listen to it and could just begin to be inspired from that. And so I would add the idea, and we start to collect all the ideas. Well, friends, that's just an at-a-glance look at what's inside the studio, some technical pieces about how to maneuver and get around the studio. We had lots of people on the webinar last night. Thank you all for being there. And just know that we're going to have weekly webinars every Thursday at 3 p.m. Right now. If that changes, just be sure and look at the online events page at marciamcfee.com. And so you can be on and ask questions and that sort of thing. Well, friends, I pray many blessings on your work of worship design. And I hope that you know that my call to ministry is to be here for you, to support you, to be your cheerleader, to be your resource person, to be your consultant, to be your coach, and to be your professor of worship, right here online whenever you need it. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the studio.